All right, welcome back, boys and girls. Today we are finally going to get started working on Tony's car. Today in this video, I think we're going to get the rear suspension pieces put in. I have so much stuff to do to this thing that I don't even know where to start. There's a lot of stuff to do. Probably quite a few videos or some videos or something in between. So yeah. It's going to be a lot of work. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you all the parts and stuff that we're going to put on today. I'm only going to show you half of the install because the other half is redundant and we don't need to go over that stuff twice. So check out the parts and let's get started. So we got all the rear suspension pieces. These, the cups go around the bushings in the rear subframe to keep the deflection at a minimum. These go hand in hand with these. These are supports, and then we got some billet end links over there and spherical bushings that replace this stuff, and then the bushings that go in right there. So some of that is going to be fun, and when I say fun, I don't mean fun. I mean kind of like a little bit of an ass whip, but we're gonna find out. And I'm gonna take one for the team. So let's see what it looks like. All right, so I've already done one side of this thing, getting the rear suspension apart to change the axles out and to change the front bushing in the lower control arm. It gets rid of the stock one and we put in a spherical bushing. And I'm here to tell you, if you don't have the right tools to do that, may the force be with you, because it is not fun. The spherical, or better yet, the original rubber bushing has to be pressed in and out, just like you would expect in anything that has an A-arm or a lower control arm and a rubber bushing and a metal sleeve. The problem is that that thing does not fit in a press, in a normal press. And if you don't buy the Steeda brand spherical bushing, it doesn't come with the tool that you need to press that thing out peacefully, if you will. So luckily, I have a lathe and material and things like that, and I made the tool, which is the same thing that Steeda sells with their spherical bearings. Anyways, I'm going to show you real quick what has to be taken off in order to get the axles out. And we're actually going to take a couple of extra things out because we also have to do cradle bushings, end links, and some various other tidbits. So let's get a look under the car. Okay, so for what I am doing on this car, which is we're changing out the axles, it is this particular part of what I'm doing. We have to take pretty much everything out of the way to get to the rest of the job. So you have to take the e-brake cable retainer holder thingy off. The wheel speed sensor bolt has to come out, and you take this piece just slides out of this bracket like that, and tie that up out of the way where you're not going to where you're not going to tear it up when this piece lays forward. And let's see, of course the end link has to come off, both bolts out of the lower control arm. And as you can see, there's a jack right now under the control arm because I'm getting ready to work on it. Let's see, the sway bar coupling link has to come off of there as well. Most of that is just in preparation for doing the cradle bushings and all that. If you're just changing axles, you don't have to take all of those things out of the way, but the majority of it does have to come out. So let's get started on that, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so what I was saying earlier is that I'm doing the axles in this thing, and I'm also doing cradle bushings and some other stuff. So if you're just doing axles and you happen to be watching this video, try to figure out how to get the axles out, stuff like that, it's not that hard, and I've taken some stuff out of the way that you won't need to take out if you're just doing axles. So I'm going to turn the camera around and show you where I'm at now. So I got the spindle off, and the lower control arm is still in the car, of course. The axle is pulled out of the hub, and
if you should happen to have a car with some miles on it, it's probably best to spray this from this side with some WD-40 before you go too far, because that thing has a tendency to get corroded and stuck in there and whatnot if it's got some road miles on it. So you'll notice if you grab the axle and pull on it, it doesn't come out yet. So there is a little teeny tiny little trick to get this thing out, and I'll roll up under the car and show you how to do that. Okay, so you're looking upside down now at the driver's side half shaft, and there's a gap. I think you can see it right there. So all you do is clang around under the car with a pry bar. Just take that pry bar and give it a shove. It's kind of hard to do with the camera in one hand. There. Okay, you can see the pry bar, I just pushed it out like that, and it's broke loose. The only reason you got to do that is because there's a retainer ring on the end of the axle, and it's doing its job. It's retaining the axle. So now that we got that retaining ring broke loose and slid through the splines, we should be able to go back and pull the axle out. And sometimes there's a couple of drops of gear oil that are going to come out of differential. It's not the end of the world. On to the next step. Okay guys, I must confess, I didn't record but about 1% of the install of the stuff that I've done to this point in the rear end. Mainly because it's kind of an ass whip to do on the ground, and it's really simple, you know, take it apart, put it back together kind of stuff. The one thing that you may or may not have trouble with is getting those original bushings out of the front lower control arm, these guys right here. And I think I said it before earlier in the video. Now this part of the video is a couple days later, but I think I said it earlier in the video. If you buy the Steeda spherical bearings for the front of the lower control arm, you get a tool that looks a lot like this, and that dude is used to pull the bushings out of the house or out of the control arm and to pull the new ones in. And you simply do it just by stacking them like this. And I used some machinist toe clamps and whatnot to pull these things out. So, you know, something along the lines of this. I used the Milwaukee 1/2-inch drive impact that I just did the video on earlier, and it worked great. It takes a little bit to get it started moving, to get the bushing started moving out of the housing. Applying a small amount of heat with a MAP gas torch to the outside of the control arm. It's aluminum, so it expands very quickly and it comes out you know, pretty easily. So you'll only learn about 4 or 5, maybe 6 cuss words doing it. So it's time to go on to the next part. I'm going to show you what I've done to this point, and we'll take it from there. All right, so this is the spherical bearing that I'm talking about, and it is in the car now, obviously. The axles, it has the driveshaft shop 2,000 horsepower axles, I think. The one thing that you have to be careful with when you do this is be sure that you disconnect that little sensor right there. That is just a snap fitting right here. You just take that dude, pop it loose, and get it out of the way. If you do not do that, the control arm can go far enough down where it will break that thing. Also, be sure to unplug the shock. You know, all the common sense stuff. 1 1/4 socket to take that dude loose. Pop the axles out of the housing. No big deal. You will have to have a spring compressor to get the coil spring back in there. That's what I used right there. So it's not that big of a deal to do that part of it, but there's still more left to be done. And I may have, in fact, even done this, maybe not out of order, but maybe not in the best order. I still have to add these braces that are over here. So I'm gonna turn the camera around so you can see that. So these are the lockouts, the cradle bushing lockouts. That's that piece and that piece right there. And that works in conjunction with the lockouts, and then some other braces that also go in there. So you have to break the rear cradle loose, take the bolts, the way I envision it working at least, is take the bolts all the way loose, drop the cradle down as far as it will go, put the lockout bushings and the lockout plates in there, torque it all back down, and hopefully you will not learn any more cuss words, because your neighbor, wife, significant other, kids, or whoever will probably laugh at you and make fun of you. So let's get started on that part, and hopefully I can show you some of it. And otherwise, if I don't show you any of it, it's because there's a lot of the cussing and whatnot going on. So time to get to work. Okay, so in the lessons learned category, I've already done one side of the car. So I've already installed the subframe braces and the bushing, the lockouts and all that jazz on one side of the car. So again, like I always say in my videos, if you are watching this for tips on how to do this, the one thing I've learned already is, first, all 4 of the subframe bolts need to stay loose until all the parts are on the car first. Next thing is connect the sway bar end links last, because the sway bar, if the end links are connected, it puts the control arms in a bind. And one of the things that you have to do is put the brace that goes on the rear subframe bushing that goes under the control the sway bar mounts. With the sway bar in a bind, you are not going to get that thing to go where it needs to go. So you have to, it needs to either be free, well, disconnected. That's about the only way it's going to work. There's that phone again. That thing always goes off when I'm filming stuff. So anyways, I'm ready to get started on the passenger side of the car. Again, if anything, leave everything loose until you get it all in the car. And then I'll show you, I don't know if I was supposed to get instructions with this, but it didn't come with them. And I had to do a bunch of digging around to find out how these lockouts stacked when they are used in conjunction with each other. So I'm gonna take the camera down there and show you what I found, and we're gonna finish this project up. Okay, you're gonna have 2 of these bushings. The thin one, the shallow one, goes in the back of the car. The thick one goes in the front of the car. This piece goes in the front of the car, and this piece goes in the rear. So put them, did I say that wrong? Oh, let's go to the other side and look. Yes. Okay, I said it right. This piece goes in the rear. This piece goes in the rear of the subframe. This in the front. This in the front. This piece is the rear brace. These 2 bolts go under the sway bar brackets. And in the BMR kit, they give you all new hardware. This particular bolt and this sleeve are used here in the front of the brace, or I'm sorry, the rear of the brace. And this sleeve goes inside of the subframe to keep you from crushing it. And it uses that hole right there. So right in front of that bolt, there's a hole. And you got to reach up in there and put that nut on it. And again, that sleeve goes inside of the subframe to keep you from crushing it when you torque that thing down. So, good God, there's a lot of light in here now. So it's time to get started throwing this stuff on the car. Maybe I can time lapse some of it. Maybe that'll get an idea how this goes in there. All right, so this video was mainly for the guys like me, the DIYers who don't have a lift and who do this kind of stuff on the garage floor. And as you can see by the time lapse, that it is a fair amount of work. You have to jog around the car, the move from bolt to bolt to bolt, and tighten it up in a sequence to get everything lined up and not in a bind, more or less. Because we've added a bunch of braces and things like that, and the more bracing you add to it, the less likely everything is to line up. So the only thing left in the rear of the car now is the differential bushings, which should be relatively straightforward. I guess we'll find out soon enough on that. Outside of that, that is the end of the video. I don't think there's anything outstanding left with the stuff that we installed. So I got under there, tightened everything up, and of course everything started before everything gets fully tightened, because if you tighten not just one single bolt, you're not going to get everything in there, just guaranteed. Anyways, that's the end of the video, guys. Thanks everybody for stopping by. If you're working on one of these cars on the ground, rear suspension wise, have fun. Anyways, we'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks, I appreciate it.